No wonder citizens wonder what's going on, and I think it's a shame. My hope is that we'll have a full house of panelists for the final forum for the public's sake, and for the sake of Missoula citizens and our taxpayers who are deeply engaged in the future of their 2-year college, their 4-year university, and their city. So we'll get that out of the way. And now let's get to tonight's forum and panelists and why you came, and I appreciate you sitting through that. Here's how tonight's forum will work. The theme is jobs and the local economy. What makes a campus? How are they related? Tonight's question that each panelist will be responding to is, what are the economic and community impacts of where the Missoula College is located? Each panelist will have up to 5 minutes to respond to the question posed. They may use presentation materials as part of their presentations or not. And the handouts that you found outside were brought by someone else, not by me, but feel free to grab one or not if you wish. The moderator will then conduct a 30-minute question and answer period from the audience members to the panelists, to an individual panelist, or to all panelists. This may go longer if we're having a good dialogue. Audience members, please keep your question as focused as possible, as a question, preferably, and try not to spend more than a minute asking that question. Panelists, please try to respond to the question asked rather than something else you'd like to say, and try to limit your answers to 2 minutes so we can get as many questions in as possible. After that, each panelist will have a 2 to 3 minute closing statement suggesting the next steps to this conversation. This whole forum should take no longer than an hour and a half. We're not planning on any breaks, but certainly if panelists need one, take it and we'll get back to you. And now here are tonight's panelists who we're very fortunate to have in attendance. And I'll read the bios I have. To my left in the middle seat is Renee Mitchell, representing Advocates for Missoula's Future. Renee was born and raised in Montana, has resided in Missoula since 1966. She's a University of Montana graduate, married to husband Jack, who owned and operated an automotive transmission business in Missoula for 3 decades. Renee has demonstrated her involvement and commitment to the Missoula community through her work with Missoula Youth Homes. This July marks 25 years of employment. Through coaching and officiating youth in various sports, through serving on her neighborhood council as leadership team member and community forum representative. She served a term on Missoula City Council as Ward 5 representative 2008 to 2012. She advocates for the preservation of the UM athletic fields and golf course, and she's promoting a Missoula college that will best serve the educational needs of its students and our business community. Panelist Tom Roy on my far left says, quote, Sue and I have lived in Missoula for 39 years, all in the same house in the university area. I came to the university as a professor of social work and then became director and professor of environmental studies for 2+ decades. I've been active as a volunteer in various community, social service, and conservation environmental nonprofits, and perhaps relevant to tonight's discussion, served the maximum 3 terms as citizen member of the State Environmental Quality Council. To my right, my near right, Dr. John Snively spent his formative years in upstate New York, where he received his primary and secondary education. Graduating from Stanford University in 1966, he then served 5 years in the Navy as Air Intelligence Officer. His professional career began when he entered the Temple University School of Dentistry in Philadelphia. During his studies there, he met Carolyn from Lewistown, Montana, who would become his lifelong love and partner, with whom he would have 2 children, Dan and Ruthie. Upon completing his dental studies, he joined the U.S. Public Health Service, spending his first year in the New Orleans PHS Hospital and his second as chief of the Indian Health Service Dental Clinic in Lame Deer, Montana. On leaving the PHS in 1978, the Sniveleys moved to Missoula, where John practiced dentistry on South Higgins Avenue until 2010. Since retiring, he's participated in the local issues, working in opposition to UM's biomass boiler and Missoula's recently enacted ADU ordinance. Tonight he represents the views of the University Area Homeowners Association as president of its board of directors. To my immediate left, Asa Homan, joining us for a second time, thanks Asa, is currently the president of the Associated Students of the University of Montana and president of the Montana Associated Students. Asa served as the student lobbyist in Helena for the 2013 legislative session. Asa was a student and graduated from the Missoula College, formerly the COT, and was born in Missoula, where most of his family is from and resides. And to my far right, Michael S. Mayer is professor of history at the University of Montana. After earning a BA at Duke University and a PhD at Princeton University, he taught at Princeton, St. Vincent College, the University of Alabama, Auckland University, the University of Illinois, and for the last 25 years at UM. He has published primarily on the 1950s, the Civil Rights Movement, and the Eisenhower administration. He serves on the executive committee of the Faculty Senate and is a past president of the University Faculty Association. So let's give a round of applause to all our participants tonight. Again, my name's Jim Parker. I'm a small business owner running a marketing and advertising company, a 1992 alumni of UM with a BA in political science and a minor in environmental science. And I've been a taxpayer in Montana since 1989. And at this point, I'll just remind you to please silence your cell phones. Before we start, and we drew randomly to see who would go 1 through 5, I just wanted to also make a statement that there have been several different accusations that these panels have been loaded one way or another to support one viewpoint or another. I'll take full responsibility for whatever panelists we do get up here because I invited them. I did my best, and I will be the first to suggest that it probably isn't perfect in the 3 forums I've had to do. Perhaps a fool's errand in today's world of contentious discussions, but every once in a while you gotta hope that a little sanity will reign, we'll have a good conversation, and might lead to greater ones thereafter, which is the only hope I have for these forums, that we may learn something new, may prompt further discussion, may include other additional stakeholders, and then of course you, the public, have every opportunity to come up and present your views, which we're giving you ample time to do tonight. So, with those caveats aside, we have a question in front of us, and the first one to respond will be Renee Mitchell. Renee, it's yours.
Thank you, Jim. And one thing I appreciate about the panel is that we do have people of all different opinions up here sharing our ideas. At least the first panel, and it was great because it was nice to attend and be part of something where we could actually share ideas and not have something unilaterally thrown at us. Anyway, I'll go right to the question, and thanks to everyone who came out tonight. What are the economic and community impacts of where the Missoula College is located? And I think we first have to ask ourselves, are we talking about one building or are we talking about a complete campus? I mean, what is a campus? Usually I think of it as an area where you have buildings that are associated with each other in an organization or an institution or a college or a hospital. That to me is a campus. Currently, we're talking about the Missoula College and one building, but the Missoula College campus right now is situated in 3 different locations. There's one out west where the industrial area is. There's one over by Sentinel High School where they have what was formerly the COT and before that the VOTEC, and they have classes on the main campus. And at one time, some of you are aware of this, back in the early 2003 and 4, there was a dean of the COT, Paul Williamson, or Williams, I guess it was, did a great study. They were going to put a Futures Park in, out by the west, what's the west campus. And after considerable money was spent, this thing was going to have a Futures Hydrogen Park, a COT, and a monorail. It was a 3-pronged thing. That was summarily chopped, done with, for some reason, no explanation was ever given. Then, in 2007, there was a COT long-range planning program in which our legislature over in Helena provided $500,000, $500,000 for a project to, and I quote, provide for a schematic design for consolidating the 3 Missoula College of Technology campuses. I think that speaks volumes, and I think we're looking at some deception or misspending of funds, because we know that $500,000 was spent on a show to tell the Missoula community why the South Campus or the athletic fields and the golf course would be where the college would be going and why, and over 32 meetings were presented to tell us why. Now we have $29 million from the state, our taxpayer dollars, and the university needs to come up with another $3 million so that they can build their Missoula College. This has never been an issue of education versus golf. It's everybody that I know supports the South Campus, supports higher education, or everybody that I know that golfs really is in favor of higher education. But we didn't see why it was necessary to destroy the historic athletic fields and golf
1 minute.
course. 1 minute. I'm obviously not going to have time to go through my comparisons of where this campus and what the effects would be. But the athletic fields are going to be a disaster to the city for many reasons. The East Broadway site, I think it's a compliance with Montana Code annotated to actually have an alternate site. I don't think it's adequate, and I don't think they're seriously looking at it, but I don't know. The West Campus, I think there is a responsibility to Missoula College students and the business community to revisit those plans and consolidate that campus. We need to get past the false sightings of a floodplain and cultural artifacts. We need to look at the 55
Okay, wrap it up,
acres
please.
that can be used with a minor 3 of them in a floodplain and consolidate a campus that the students can be proud of, the Missoula community can be proud of, and we can educate these kids in a short time
Renee,
to put them in the business force. Thank you, Jim.
thanks so much. Asa, it's all yours.
Well, first of all, thanks everybody for coming out tonight, and thanks Jim for having this forum again. I believe the question was what the economic impacts and the community impacts were to the siting of the location of the proposed Missoula College, the new Missoula College facility. And I'll not sit up here and pretend to be an expert in the economics of community development, but I will tell you that I think that the newly proposed East Broadway location, in my vision and in my opinion, would provide for a bolstering of the economic community in that part of town. I think that the businesses on East Broadway would have more traffic. They would have more folks going into them. I think that the downtown economy of Missoula would also see a growth in their clientele because of the East Broadway location. So in terms of just rough economic development, I think that that's a plus. I think it's a pretty obvious plus. I think in terms of community development, I don't really have an issue with the East Broadway location. We're not displacing any homes. We're not displacing any areas of recreation. We're just opening up a facility that fits on the land, fits on the footprint, and has most of the roads and parking spaces already built. In terms of the proposed South Campus location, I also think that that's a benefit for the community. I think it's a benefit for the community both around the campus. As campuses grow, more often than not, the property rates tend to go up with them. And because it'll bring in the students to be closer to the main campus, which any of you who have been to a forum that I've spoken at know that I'm a proponent of helping students go from 2-year to 4-year education. It's what I did, and I think it's the best of 2 worlds. And in terms of economics, we know that a 4-year degree certainly pays more over the years than a 2-year degree.
Thank you very much for your efficiency. Next speaker would be Tom Roy. Tom, yours. Tom, can you speak into the microphone? And just push the button down, yep, till it's green. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Whatever the build-out plan the university proposes, it's my judgment or my proposition that the community should press the university to do an environmental impact statement. Very quickly, an environmental impact statement is required when there's a major action that will significantly affect the state's environment. And the key component, and why I believe an environmental impact statement should be done by the university, is that such a statement requires, in this case, the university to solicit public comment to determine the scope of the analysis that the environmental impact statement will undertake. Why is that necessary? Let me just use traffic on Arthur Avenue. We happen to reside on Arthur Avenue. The university ASUM Transportation uses Arthur Avenue for its bus service. The university, in 2011, with the proposed biofuel mass project, completed an environmental assessment, which concluded that the 3 to 5 heavy vehicles, and incidentally buses are considered heavy vehicles, that would be necessary for the biomass fuel project would have an adverse impact upon the residential character of Arthur Avenue. The adverse impact, and they capitalized it, was NOISE, noise. The mitigation proposed was that these trucks, these heavy vehicles, simply could not use Arthur Avenue. They would have to be routed down 5th and 6th Street. In the fall of 2012, University ASUM Transportation doubled the number of buses using Arthur Avenue, despite the recommendation of the 2011 environmental assessment, and despite the fact that there is no opportunity for Arthur residents to voice their concerns about the traffic flow on Arthur Avenue. And I just would like to read something from the City of Missoula ordinance with respect to noise. It is declared to be public policy of the city to regulate the ambient noise levels in the city so as to preserve, protect, and promote the public health, safety, and welfare, and the peace and quiet of the inhabitants of the city. It is the public policy of the city that every person is entitled to live in an environment where ambient noise levels are not detrimental of life, health, and enjoyment of his, I'll add, her property and community. I will just tell you that several of us who are residents along Arthur Avenue had an independent acoustical engineer conduct a reading of the noise levels of the ASUM buses, and the fellow's name is Charles Kahane, and he determined that the noise levels, he measured them at 2 locations on Arthur Avenue, were 98.6 decibels and 97.5 decibels. The city ordinance with respect to noise says that the top limit for a residential area during the daytime is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is 60, 55 from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., and between 7 p.m. and 6 a.m., 50 decibels. So these ASUM buses are running considerably over. Now, I will say that there is an exception granted for heavy vehicles, but the exception is meant, yes, if you're operating a heavy vehicle, you can use Arthur Avenue, but it's also meant to be exceptional, that wouldn't be a common occurrence because all commercial heavy vehicles are not allowed to come down Arthur Avenue. They're routed down 5th and 6th Street. I guess my point is this. The history to date demonstrates that the university / ASUM don't consider or give thoughtful consideration to the concerns and interests of their neighbors. The only way the community can have some say in the university's decision about any proposed campus and its impact upon the neighborhood is to press the university to do an environmental impact statement. I'm done.
Nice. Thank you, Tom. And now John Snively. John?
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, everybody. This is going to sound like the whole kitchen sink compared to everybody else, but here goes. First, all of us can acknowledge that the University of Montana and the Montana College have huge economic impacts on Missoula's economy. And I will not repeat all those impacts. As a representative of the homeowners in the neighborhood nearest the university, I appreciate all these benefits, but especially our proximity to the university services and the diversity the university brings to our neighborhood. However, these benefits do not come without cost. First and foremost, the university has increasingly relied on Missoula neighborhoods to offset its need for student housing by failing to build adequate on-campus dorms, even as the student body has doubled in the last few decades. The result has been a conversion of houses throughout the city to rentals, but especially in neighborhoods near the university. It is no secret that most of those rentals suffer from lack of upkeep, often resulting in unsafe living space and loss of aesthetic appeal from the street. This often exacts quality of life as well as monetary costs on the affected neighbors. Well, this year, Mayor Engen and President Engstrom pledged to build 1,000 new units of rental housing accessible to students. In the past, the university and the city of Missoula actively have pursued policies which have aggravated the problem. Additionally, they have failed to make statewide rental safety standards a priority to take to the state legislature. Some of the related costs we're talking about that affect us as a city: yards with dead lawns, litter, and distressed trees. An additional $50,000 had to be added to Missoula's current budget, in part to care for and replace these trees. The second thing would be Mayor Engen has voiced the need for additional quality of life police officers to address neighborhood complaints of noise and unruly behavior, validating many residents' concerns about poorly managed rental housing with no occupancy or safety standards. In the end, the city budget will now allow 2 additional police departments or police officers and cost as much as $120,000 more this year. Third, we have created a strong market for investment property in our neighborhoods that has helped inflate housing prices, pushing young families with children to the outskirts of our city and resulting in burgeoning school rolls outside the city. Much has been made of the importance of siting the Missoula College near the university to both integrate their programs and reduce dependency on the automobile. However, I would echo Dr. Kia's comment from last month that siting should be driven by mission, efficiency, and respect for the college, not location issues. But since students of the college are commuters, often living in areas inconvenient to bus travel,
1 minute.
motor vehicle traffic and parking will be an issue wherever its campus is located. Near the UM Mountain campus, however, it will surely exacerbate the already serious traffic and parking congestion in the surrounding neighborhoods. Finally, ASUM's costly and redundant park and ride bus service is one of the best indications that anticipated bus utilization on and near the university will be very low. These buses often travel empty through one of the most densely populated areas of the city, and that includes the university, following directly behind one another, spewing pollution and noise at all hours. Our neighborhood has suffered significant damage from this ill-conceived program, which calls to question whether the University of Montana and the city of Missoula can get together on anything, if not something as basic as clean, efficient, and cost-effective bus service.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've got one sentence to say.
One sentence, go ahead.
Okay, the university homeowners sees significant problems in locating the Missoula College near the UM Mountain campus and strongly supports unifying all its elements at the Fort Missoula site. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last panelist tonight, Michael Mayer. Michael.
Thank you, and thank everybody for coming out. I'm sorry, very sorry that the city and the university chose not to participate tonight, and I'm particularly, as a member of the faculty, sorry and embarrassed that the university chose not to participate. The economic benefits of the university in general are pretty well known, as John suggested, but I think it's worth running past them quickly. The city benefits from an educated workforce, whether it be in the liberal arts or in technological education. Students are drawn to town. They pay rent, they buy food, they buy clothing. Sports attract people to Missoula. Faculty bring their families, sometimes extended families, and contribute to the economy of the city. But there are economic problems associated with the proximity of the university, especially, although not exclusively, with those neighborhoods closest to the university. And it's an unfortunate fact that the university has not always been a good neighbor. One good example would be that in the late 80s and early 1990s, the university expanded by about 5,000 students and did not build a single dorm room. Eventually, Panzer Hall and the new apartments along South Higgins provided some new living space, but it is hardly adequate to the expansion of the student population. As things stand now, the university has housing for about a quarter of its students. And that puts pressure on residential neighborhoods, especially those close to the university. In the last meeting, one member of the city council argued that the concentration of population would reduce the use of cars. But the fact is, if students live close to the university, they're still going to commute out to Reserve Street to do shopping, and they're going to go to work, and there aren't all that many jobs right in the university district. In other words, concentration of students shifts the flow of traffic. It doesn't cut it substantially. The pressure on rental markets reduces family occupancy. Families can't compete with a prospective slumlord as a purchaser. Therefore, there are fewer families close in and fewer children. As families move farther out, as John suggested, the schools, we have to build new schools farther out, and then we wind up closing schools close in. Anyone, you don't need a PhD in urban planning to figure this out. In fact, maybe only people with PhDs in urban planning can't figure this out. Rentals have substantially damaged the quality of life. The issues of noise and upkeep have been mentioned. And I think that the university needs to be very cognizant of the fact that the location of the Missoula College in or near a residential area will put pressure on that area, traffic, parking, and other concerns. And if put near the university district, say on the south campus, rentals, traffic, parking will again be problems. I think overall the university needs to pay more attention to the concerns of the public, particularly the public that lives closer. And that's demonstrated by the fact that the university chose not to send a representative to participate in this forum tonight. I'm done for now. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Michael, and thank you, panelists, for that first section. We're now going to move into your time, audience members, to come up one at a time. We'll try to make time available for as many questions as we have. Come on up to this microphone, turn it on so the green light's on, and ask your question to one or more of the panelists. Come on up. It's your turn.
Okay, very quickly, there was a comment today, what time of serendipity by Arlene Walker, who sent a note there today on bridging the gap between 2 years and 4 years, which is impossible because there's two different things. Only Mao Zedong tried to bridge the gap between working class, which is fine. Okay, my question is...
Your microphone isn't on.
It's not on. I can speak now.
You didn't hear me? Okay, so my question is to you, and I'm really sorry the university has chose to send you. It's a tripartite system university of the administration, the professors, and students, and I think it's kind of cowardly on their... good, I can be quoted. Now, my question is, if students want a 4-year education, they can do a 2-year, then a 4-year. That's 6 years altogether. Now, the problem is that, don't you think that university wants to put the two together, which have totally different mission, in order to outsource the 4 years into the 2 years? It's a strong term, meaning that the 2 years college, Missoula, is going to erode the philosophical education and the task of the 4 years, what I'm afraid. As you know, there's faculty who are employed, don't have the same status, they don't have the same salary, they don't have to do research, and little by little, they cost less. Those students of the 4 year could go to the 2 year and get a cheaper deal. So there is a clash there. I would like to address that. If it's a difficult question, it's happening all over the country, by the way. Community college and 2 years education are used by the system to erode the 4 year liberal education, which has a different task, as you know.
Good luck, Asa.
Oh, thank you. I do know what outsourcing means, but thank you. Appreciate the question. I think, first of all, I want to address something. You said that it's impossible to bridge the 2-year to 4-year gap, and I take an issue with that statement. Now, I'll get to your bigger question in just a moment, but I bridge the 2-year to 4-year gap. There's lots of students who bridge the 2-year to 4-year gap, and it increases both our economic viability as workers in the workforce doing so, as well as our own personal well-being. I don't think it's impossible, and I think you're doing a disservice to students to imply that it's impossible. In terms of the university sending me to be here, I want to be perfectly clear that I was sent by no man or woman. I'm here of my own accord as a representative for the student body. And finally, in terms of the university, I think, and perhaps you didn't mean this, but I think implied in your statement is that the university is willing to degrade the value of their education for a cheaper workforce. And I don't think that that's a fact. I respect your opinion, but I don't have such a low opinion of the university that I think that they would throw away the value of having a degree from the University of Montana for the sake of it being more affordable. But I'd also like to mention, what's wrong with trying to make school more affordable? You're absolutely right. A student can do 2 years of his degree or her degree at a 2-year school. Why shouldn't we promote that? With debt levels skyrocketing for students, with defaults skyrocketing for students who have student loans, why shouldn't we make the first 2 years of their education cheaper by any means necessary? Do we want to have an educated populace, or do we want to employ more tenured professors? I think tenured professors are fantastic, and they're doing the entire brunt of my education right now. But there's still a place for adjunct professors. There's still a place for 2-year college. There's still a place for affordable education. And I don't think for a second that the university would be so foolish as to degrade the value of their diploma by cutting off qualified faculty.
Thank you.
Hi there. I'll try not to speak too loud. I tend to do that. My name is Sue Bradford. I'm a doctor of education. I have done research, and I do teach at Missoula College for 8 years now. I teach interdisciplinarily, introduction to college, college survival, basic math for people who missed that boat in high school or are coming back after a long career and frankly don't remember algebra. And I teach an introduction to environmental studies. I have a section in Nature and Society that we fill up and allow our students to sample some of their career options and open their minds to some of their own possibilities besides workforce preparation. I raise that because, well, a couple comments. First of all, the absence of someone from Missoula College on this panel. It's fortunate that Asa has that background, so I'm glad to see that, because on your initial list, I saw no one or nothing to include what I would see as a very important stakeholder in any discussion concerning the future of Missoula College. And you know, I'll let you digest your reasons for that, but to me as a community member, that was the first thing I noticed, that my interests are in no way represented by this panel. Now, as a faculty member, I also serve on Faculty Senate. I take an interest in liberal education and philosophy of education, and I would argue that the alleged totally different missions between our two campuses is largely based on stereotype and not accurate at all.
Can we get
The
to
fact
the
is-
question?
The fact is, yes, I'll get to my question
Thanks.
momentarily. The fact is, however, that the mission of two-year education has always included transfer education as a large component of that, and roughly half of our students are working on AA degrees or currently undeclared, and possible transfers to the UM campus. They're also required to fulfill general education requirements, which are part and parcel of the liberal arts mission, and it's important to us as a university that our students, I believe, speaking only for myself, as an idealist, I might add, that all students who complete a certificate or degree at any college of the University of Montana have basic skills of literacy, articulation, written and oral expression, computer skills, and mathematical skills. And that's part of our mission and our requirement. Some of those can be met on the two-year campus, but a vast number of our students, in fact, are interested in four-year degrees, and as part of their general education requirements, are in a position where commuting between campuses is desirable for them. A small number of students also can go the other direction and enroll in our classes because they're smaller and provide a more intimate environment, and it has a lot to do with diverse learning skills. Now, in your responses to the question about economic and community impacts, I heard an array of responses. I think on the transportation issue, that's something that addresses city buses as well as the ASUM buses, which frankly I think are excellent option compared to individual cars. The proximity close to the university also facilitates walking and bicycling much more effectively than something way out on the edge of town. So I'm wondering if simply rerouting that bus route so it goes down Higgins Avenue to 6th and around the back of the university actually resolves those concerns.
Sue, can you get to a question, please?
Well, that was a question. Tom, could you address that?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I would agree with you. I will tell you that over 2.5 years ago, some of us who live along Arthur Avenue met with Mayor Engen, Jim Foley, who was then Executive Vice President of the university, to talk about traffic on Arthur at that point in time. We weren't at that time thinking about the proposed South Campus. The university, through Jim Foley, at that point in time, promised that by the fall of 2011, all the offensive ASUM buses, and it is the ASUM buses that exceed the noise level, not Mountain Lion buses, would be removed from their route, and that they would consider rerouting buses using 5th and 6th Street. I should also say that when Mountain Lion instituted its bus service, which I believe was 35 or 40 years ago, it was originally routed down south to Maurice, and you may, if you've driven that way, you know that's sort of the logical way to go. South just runs right into Maurice. The residents on Maurice objected. Mountain Lion proposed using Arthur. Those of us on Arthur at the time said, fine. We didn't see that as a problem. We didn't anticipate that the number of buses would become as great as it's become and that they would be as noisy as they are. But yeah, I think that's a very viable option. And I'm not suggesting that all buses should be taken from Arthur, but certainly those that violate the noise ordinance ought to be off the route. And it does seem to make sense, rather than run all the buses on the same route, to perhaps use some variable routes, both frankly to protect the residential character of our neighborhood, but also I think that would better serve students.
I just real quick want to mention, primarily to yourself, but also for everybody. As the president of ASUM, I'm also aware of the ASUM transportation issue and the history behind it. I think it's worth noting at this time that there have been historically 2 buses, primarily in our fleet, that have been the cause for the most complaints about noise and pollution. And we were cognizant of that issue, and we work within a very limited budget. We are completely funded by students and grants that we can pick up from the government. So in doing our best to accommodate the neighborhood, we have been approved for 2 grants from DEQ to appropriate buses that will meet your standards. One will be arriving in September. Our director of transportation is actually flying to California to do an initial inspection of it. It will then be brought out. The second one will be a year from September when we will receive that second bus, and that's government timeline, not our own. We have no say in that. So I just wanted to mention that. And in terms of routes, I think that ASUM Transportation would love to come to a table where the conversation was increasing our routes in a more diverse way.
Thanks, Asa. And regarding the notion of like to have some panelists from COT, I appreciate that. My understanding is that UM President's Office has final say on what happens at the COT, so having an administrator from the COT, I think, poses a real difficulty trying to speak either for or against their boss, so I asked the President's Office to be responsible for that conversation. And again, I'm sorry they're not here to be able to respond to such questions. Thanks. Someone else from the audience? Oh, I'm sorry. Renee?
I just have a question. Asa said that the ASUM buses are paid for totally by student fees, and I also thought they were paid for by the homeowners who buy permits so they can park in front of their own houses, that also supports your bus. Is that true?
No, all of our fees are from a self-imposed student implementation process. Our students vote on their own fee structure. All the fees that we collect from students have been brought before students to be voted upon. We don't receive funds from any other source.
Thanks. Yeah, come on up. And again, if you would state your name before you start. Thanks.
Sure. My name is Lynn Dickman, and I live in the university area. I'm retired geologist for the Forest Service and soil scientist, and I've spent much time on environmental impact statements, as you can imagine. And so my question is going to be for Tom, though it was inspired by Renee because of the idea of having a campus for all the buildings for Fort Missoula, for the College of Technology, and trying to understand why the Fort Missoula location was dismissed. I heard something about floodplains and archaeological values. I'm going, well, wait a minute, don't you look at riparian and heritage resources before you even begin? So how did all this money get spent on the Fort Missoula study without quickly coming to the conclusion that you're in riparian areas, for example? So Tom, do you have any response for that?
Well, I would agree with you in this sense, and understand this is just my opinion. It strikes me that the university both should, and even if they aren't required to, it would make sense for them to conduct an environmental impact statement, be the campus choice, Fort Missoula, South Campus, Broadway, or wherever they propose to do it, for precisely the reason you put forward. My understanding is, from the university administration, is that they don't want to do it until they've already figured out where the site is and what it would look like and so forth. It does seem to me that what you would rather do is say, if this is our site, what are the impacts going to be? Are the impacts going to be such that, that they're going to require mitigation? What's the level of mitigation required? Is that something that we can afford to do, et cetera? I don't understand why they haven't taken that approach, which to my mind would be the more sensible approach. You may have read, I don't know, 6 weeks, 2 months ago, the Maclay Street Bridge there's a proposal to replace it. And the newspaper, the Missoulian, reported that before anything happens on the Maclay Street Bridge, which is a $7 million project as proposed, there would have to be an environmental impact statement done. And I thought, well, I don't quite get it. I mean, if we're going to have to do one there, why wouldn't we for a $29 million, and I may have to be off by a couple of $1 million on the College of Technology proposal, but why wouldn't you do an environmental impact statement prior, in that case, as you would, for example, the Maclay Street Bridge? I don't I don't know why the university has chosen to go that route, frankly. It seems backwards to me.
Thank you.
My name is David Werner. I'm a resident of Missoula. For about 15 years now, I came back to Montana after serving 25 years at a community college in Colorado. And I guess at this point, my question is, how many in this room have had professional experience at a community college outside of Montana? Okay, there are two people here. Okay, I'm one of them. And I believe that any kind of experience like that will teach you or show you that community college students, and I prefer to use the term community college because that's what I see Missoula College is, as the students are different because they come from different backgrounds. I provided a handout here that people can look at. And I think that there's been a statement that transfer students in the liberal arts that want to transfer to the university can benefit by going to the university. And the courses may be duplicative, but the students are not duplicative. They come from different backgrounds. They have different learning abilities, different previous academic experiences from students. And it's not fair. And I would maintain that if Missoula College had its own campus out at the Fort Missoula location, a campus just like what Flathead Valley Community College does, that more students, perhaps hundreds more students, would come out of the woodwork, so to speak, and attend Missoula College and thereby benefit the economy and quality of life for Missoula and these people.
Okay, a question in there?
Well, I guess I asked my question in the beginning about who in here has had previous community college experience. I tried to get around.
Oh, do you have
it.
another one to wrap up with, sir?
Well, what I would like to say is, what is your view about the students that you guess might not be adequately served by having Missoula College so closely tied in proximity and in class attendance and that sort of thing to the university?
Whoever would like to. Asa, you want to start? Okay.
Again, thanks for the question. Well, first of all, I'd like to clarify, the Missoula College is not a community college. We have Flathead Valley Community College, Miles Community College, Dawson Community College. Those are community colleges. They're funded through a completely different funding mechanism. We're funded through the statewide appropriation system in Helena. It's completely different. And as such, we are part of the university system. However, that's neither here nor there in terms of your greater question, which was serving students, which I appreciate that question. I think the question of serving students isn't asked enough in these forums. But I'd like to point out that the students, by and large, have spoken. Missoula College students have spoken. They've spoken out overwhelming numbers in the legislature this past session, asking for a new facility and actually asking it for at the South Campus. I don't think there are the fears that this paradigm of thinking brings about. For one thing, Missoula College is the fastest growing two-year school in the state. So I think while it's a nice notion to think of us growing even faster, we're doing a pretty darn good job. And in terms of us having different abilities, I think what we have is different paths, but the same, if not even greater ability. I barely graduated high school. I came out and took a number of years off. I went to the Missoula College, and because of its proximity to the main campus, and because every semester there was a class or two that I needed to take on the big campus, I was able to break down that fear of a big traditional four-year school. I was able to see what it was, not a big scary institution, but a place I could learn just like I did at the Missoula College. And because of that, I transferred successfully, and without pulling my own leg hair, I'm fairly successful on the big campus as well.
I'd like to speak to that as well. I would never deny that there aren't some students, ASIS is a good example, who can make that transition seamlessly. But the fact is that Missoula College is basically open admissions, and not many of the students, for one reason or another, are not ready to do four-year college work. And putting those students in a classroom with other students is not only not fair to those students, but to the class itself, to the instructors. It makes the educational environment much, much more difficult. And I think that's something to think about. And blending the two creates other problems. The two missions of Missoula College are technical education and creating an inexpensive first 2 years. And if we blend the two too much, the first 2 years aren't going to be that inexpensive. We won't be able to maintain the cost structure of the Missoula College. And if it doesn't matter whether some individual faculty members at the Missoula College do research. The Missoula College does not pay for a major research infrastructure the way the university does. That increased the cost of education. It has enormous benefits for the education of undergraduates who are ready for a university education. But blending the two does damage not only to the university, but also to some of the basic missions of the Missoula College as well.
I guess I'd like to chime in on that too. There was a comment earlier from the doctor who teaches out at the Missoula College that she believes that one of the reasons for the separation is because of stereotyping. And I know personally people whose kids, the parents never did go to college. They work hard in what they do, and their kids are now going to Missoula College. They would be terrified to go to a university starting out. Now, if they had their own campus and they had their own career counseling there, they wouldn't need to send somebody from the university once a week to try to get them to, get help to them and guidance. Another thing that was brought up was, well, the kids need daycare, and I don't think that holds much water because I know the daycare at the university is pretty full and there's a waiting line. But when you have people going to the Missoula College who have families and work, which most of them do, 90% of them depend upon a car to go not only from taking their kids to school and getting to work and appointments and then going to their class and getting back. They need their cars. These people would be benefited by a main campus where they could go in. If there was a daycare, they could leave their kids there, go to class, and do their thing. The other thing was the student health service. If everybody lived on campus, I would say that would be very convenient to go over to the student health center. But most of the people who go to Missoula College do not live on campus. If they need to see a doctor, they're going either from their home or their work, maybe from their class, and their class might be on one of 3 campuses, and in the future, maybe one of 4 campuses. It would be nice if they had a one-stop shop. And the mission, as I understand it, for the 2-year college is to get our workforce ready so that local businesses have employees to fill in where they're needed, or they can go back and get skills that upgrade their skills when the employer needs it. It's for the benefit of those students and for the community businesses. In no way were 2-year colleges set up to benefit a 4-year university. And this 4-year university has a history of misspending people's money terribly. I'm sorry to say, this is my alma mater. I wish I could say better things at sometimes. They do some great things. They have a huge economic impact on this community. We rely on these students to bring money into Missoula, but I think we also need to make sure students' needs are met, and especially the Missoula College students. Let's get kids into school who otherwise would not go to school. Once you get into a 2-year college, you may want to go to take some university classes. But I thought the idea was to get kids into higher education who otherwise probably wouldn't go.
Thank you. Another question?
My name is Sarah Smith. I am the president of the Honor Society at Missoula College, and I am a University of Montana student. When I graduate, I will get a certificate. Actually, I will get a diploma that has the University of Montana logo. My certificate or diploma is equal to a diploma that is received by somebody that graduates from the Mountain campus. I had a couple of points that I wanted to make before I brought forth a question. One of them being that we are University of Montana students, and that our faculty are accredited. They go through all of the same processes. There are differences, as everybody's aware of, but our faculty are not in any way inferior. Another point that I wanted to make was that we are not a community college. We are embedded into the university. And because of that, a lot of the back and forth between campuses by Missoula College students headed that way, Mountain Campus students headed our direction, is because classes that are required for a Missoula College degree are not held at Missoula College. So some of those we have to travel to. Some of the ones that that the Mountain Campus students need are held at Missoula College. And I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here. I'm sorry for that. Another point that I wanted to make is that Missoula College has a mission statement. And there's a lot of guessing and implying about what that might be and kind of Frankensteining it from community college mission statements from around the country. It exists. I think we should probably take a look at it. And let's get to my question. I'm sorry. Some of them have been answered already. One of the very important issues that Missoula College students have been addressing over the last year is the proximity. We do need access to the student services that we pay for. We pay for the health benefits. We pay for daycare. We pay all of the same fees. We are Missoula College students are university students, and we're being represented remotely. It's very important to us as Missoula College students that we are represented by our ASUM, and that they know what we're going through. I think that putting Missoula College on the other side of town is going to isolate us further. In addition, it will isolate the culinary department, which is an issue back and forth about bringing them with us. I think it's going to be important wherever they decide to build a Missoula College, and I think we're all in agreement that Missoula College needs a new home. It's going to be important to bring the culinary department with us at some point. My question is directed at everybody. Actually, I had one more point, sorry. Tom, you mentioned the bridge and the environmental impact statement for the Missoulian.
Yeah.
Okay, I think one of the reasons that the two are different is that they know where the bridge is going to be. We don't know right now where Missoula College is going to be, try to get through my scribbles here. My question is, have we talked to or discussed the impact that we're going to have out at Orchard Homes? When you drive out that direction, there is a huge sign, "We do not want to be annexed." Has anybody considered that the Missoula College out there is going to bring city sewer? It's going to bring forth the annexation of that area.
Who wants that one?
I'm sorry, Mr. Name. Sarah? Well, first of all, you were very articulate. I appreciate your comments. I'd just respond to the Orchard Homes question. and simply say, I think the questions you raise about Orchard Homes it clearly suggests that there should be an environmental impact statement done with respect to a campus were it to be in that neighborhood. But I would argue that if that's the case for Orchard Homes, it's the case for wherever the college is proposed to be built.
The university district is in city limits, though.
But there will be impacts, and that's really the question. You know, at Orchard Homes, the impacts will be a bit different, but there'll be impacts in the university area. And I think one of the problems, at least for the university area and other areas close by the university, is that, as Dr. Snavely pointed out, there have already been impacts that haven't been accounted for. And in a sense, the proposed South Campus and the College of Technology is, in a sense, being victimized by the university's failure to address the housing, parking, traffic problems in the past. That's my own opinion, but I do think that there's some truth to that.
Sure.
I think I'd agree with everything Tom just said, and far from having drawn any comments about the mission of the Missoula College from some abstract of what other places have, I have it right here in front of me, and it's specifically exactly what I said. And if you look at the more specifics, key purposes and attributes, transfer education through the associate's degree, not intermingling necessarily, workforce development, developmental and adult-based education, lifelong learning, community development. Important missions to be sure, but different missions from that of a four-year university. And you have a different basis of admission. You have a different mission of a university, of an educational institution. And whether or not the two are completely diametrically opposed or not is not the point. They're very, very different. And I think that we need to consider that as well, because the educational mission seems to be driving at least some of the siting of the university.
And, Asa? Yeah, sure.
I'm not going to try and answer your question because I'm not an expert in the field, but I did want to point out that the question was not answered. The question you asked was, do the folks out at Orchard Homes, do the folks out in that community want the Missoula College out there for fear that it might lead to their annexation to the city, which they are very clearly against? So I appreciate all the comment we had. I just wanted to point out that nobody here seems to know the answer to that question, and maybe before we start jumping off at other locations, we should probably find that out.
And maybe the city's developmental services department may have been able to answer that for us. You never know. Yes, next question.
The front door is locked and people can't get in.
Can you prop it open, maybe? Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Karen Slobot. I'm on the Design Review Board and the Historic Preservation Board, and I also have taught some classes at the university, and my background is in urban planning. And so I just wanted to come down today and just mention a little bit about what urban planners might think of this scenario. And generally, the goal with smart planning is to create a series of hubs, different cultural hubs around a community, so that there's not just one place that kind of focuses all the education or all the retail or all the hip strip stuff. You want to divide them into different areas to attract people to be sort of a walking population that feels comfortable on the streets and interacts with the other people there, and has your cafes and various things in different spots. It also helps with transportation and when a community grows, you don't want to have something too compacted in an area. And I think if the College of Technology ends up in the golf course area, that it's not going to really be able to grow in future years to the extent that it probably will make sense to do. So a larger spot with a very efficient shuttle service back and forth with the university and other ties could be a solution to that. And probably a good way to go from an urban planning standpoint. So just wanted to throw that out there. I'm sorry, I don't really have a question.
Okay. We'll let you go. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Louis Schneller. I'm a member of the Advocates for Missoula's Future, and I've been a resident of Missoula for a long, long time, raised 4 children, got 2 degrees from the university, a BA and an MA. Actually played football with the Grizzlies back in the early 60s. That makes me very old. Anyway, I'm going to start out with a question right off the bat, and then I'd like to follow up with a comment concerning the question. And primarily what I'd like to ask you, and this is loaded, this is heavy. You know, for the past 2 years, we've heard nothing but problems coming out of the University of Montana with regard to all kinds of things. And here we have, I think the sign says, decline to participate. Now, I think that's very indicative. And my question simply is this: is it time for Missoula and the state of Montana to consider a change of leadership at the University of Montana? Secondly, my next question. See, I'm getting to the questions. Okay. My next question simply is this: is it about just the money? Follow the money. The combining or the blending, as was suggested in the last meeting, of apples and oranges to come out with a smoothie, and blending this Missoula College with the University of Montana, isn't it not more a question, and that's what I'm asking you, of numbers, population numbers, to cover for the declining enrollment at the University of Montana, which still is declining, to cover up the difference in the loss of revenue to operate the University of Montana, which amounts to this year alone $8.5 million. And as a result, we have a gutting out of a tremendous tradition at the University of Montana called the liberal arts humanity programs, adjunct professors arbitrarily dismissed, classes being cut before even instructors and faculty members are aware of it. You know, and I ask these questions only with regard to if we could impose a picture on that beautiful screen behind you, Jim, and put a picture of the University of Montana at the turn of the century, you would see one building on that campus. You know what that building was? It was the administration building. That was the first one. It was big. It's still there. And the buck stops there, and they're not here. I think it's time, and I ask you, answer that question. Is it time for a change of leadership? Thank you.
And who would love to jump into that snake pit? Any comments from our panelists? Please.
I'd like to comment on not Louis' question quite yet, but first the person who spoke before Louis, and her feeling that creating hubs of activity, of learning, of social consequence around Missoula would be something we should be looking at. And it's always struck me that everybody who is discussing this issue, especially from those who want to unite physically the College of Technology, Missoula College, with the UM, feel it should be in close proximity. Well, by any standard, in the Fort Missoula area, it's not that far away. And it's like she said, it's an easy commute or shuttle between schools if students have to take classes. But further, to comment on what Mike's comment was, I think that I don't understand personally why the curriculum has to be structured so strongly to encourage people to take courses at the university or the College of Technology. Why as I understand it, the courses at the college are of such excellent quality. What is the problem? That they can't provide their own professors to their own teachers for these courses. But I think Louis' hot question is one that many of us in the community have been asking. When I learned that the university was not going to participate today, I was very disappointed. And I think it shows a continuing reluctance of the university to encounter the citizens of Missoula, the people who pay the bills, and who have the most interest in what's going on. Over and over, the university has failed to engage them in discussions of many, many important things during their planning sessions throughout the last decade and before, perhaps, but certainly in the last decade. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to Louis' question, the question about leadership. And having said that, I'm going to be a bit evasive. I'm not going to suggest that there should be a change of leadership, but I would suggest that the strategy the administration has chosen to pursue with relationship to how it involves itself with the local community about the selection and choice of site is I think, very misguided. I think we've seen tonight, ASA, for example, has offered that we could sit down and talk about routes, that there are buses being replaced and so forth. News to me. And I was going to bring a packet of correspondence that's probably this high that I've had with university officials over the last 2.5 years, and their position has been quite clear, that until the legislature appropriates the money, we're not going to talk. Once the monies have been appropriated, I had thought that they would enter into conversations with the community. Now their position seems to be, we won't talk until we have a final design. It just seems to me terribly misguided. And I'll just use I hate to keep belaboring this traffic thing, but it is what sort of gourds me. I suggested when there was a first forum where the university introduced the plan for the South Campus, there was a bit of a sort of social afterwards, and I spoke with several administrators in the university and suggested, listen, why don't you take some of the issues and problems that you know are out there, housing, parking, traffic, I'm not sure what else they'd be, and think about coming up with some working groups. You pick people from the university, you pick people from the university area, the Slant Street area, other areas of the community that might be affected, and let's just sit down and see what we can come up with. Let's kind of identify what the issues are. It'd sort of be a mini scoping process, if you will. No commitments, no obligations, but I think we can probably figure some things out. As Sue suggested, why don't some of the bus routes go down Higgins or 5th or 6th or Maurice? And as Asa said, that's something that's on the table. Well, we suggested that over 2.5 years ago, and nothing's happened. And and I'm not sure why. And I think in that sense, there hasn't been leadership. I think that I'm not suggesting the leadership should be replaced, but I am suggesting that there's been a failure to lead, and certainly a poor choice of strategies, at least with respect to the relations between the university and the immediate neighborhoods. I just want to say, Asa said, well, nobody answered the question about how the people of Orchard Homes would feel about the college being out in their neighborhood. I think what we're in part saying is nobody's really asked the university area either. And I can tell you, if they were asked, what would they say, John? Correct.
Thanks. We'll try to get in with. Okay. We'll have Asa speak to this question, and then I'm going to try to, with the audience's permission, get the last questions in before we move on. But thanks, Asa.
Yeah, just I'll be as quick as I can, because there was a lot of points asked to the entire forum here. First of all, you mentioned, Louis, the population issue that maybe the university is trying to hide its declining population in the increasing population of the Missoula College. But there's a little bit of flaw in that thinking because our populations are already mixed. So we are one institution. So our numbers always show cumulatively. You're not a Missoula College student going to an entirely different institution. You're a University of Montana student attending the college, the Missoula College, just as you might attend the Honors College or the Liberal Arts College. Secondly, in terms of the gutting of programs, I couldn't be more on the same page with you. I think that the gutting of our higher education is a shame, but not a shame that I'm going to lay on the feet of our current administration. I'm going to lay it on the feet of the folks in this room and everybody in this community and everybody in this nation who has left higher education behind, who's let elected officials decide that they don't want to spend money on higher education, they want to pursue other areas of economic development. There was a time when we taught liberal arts, not because we thought that they were going to give people high-paying jobs, but because we thought it made people better people. We don't do that anymore because we want to rush people out into the workforce. So I'm reticent to say, you know what, admin, you've got these programs. Well, in fact, they don't have the funding for them because our enrollment's declining, because students aren't going to school anymore, because we don't have a focus on education like we one time did in this great nation. And I'd also like to point out that the administration did an outstanding job of taking those academic cuts from the proposed 6% that was across the board for everybody down to 2% for the academic and 6% for everybody else. So they did what they could. And in terms of it being a money issue, I can see that, right? I've said money a lot of times. I've said it's about saving us money. Well, I can understand that, and to a degree it is about saving students money, but it's also about hearing what the students want, and the students have spoken. And I feel like sometimes the university doesn't do a great job of hearing students, and sometimes they do. And in this particular case, they've done a great job of listening to students. They've heard us say we need a new facility. We can't continue to pursue our education here. Please do something about it. And it took them 8 years to do it at the legislature, which is indicative of a lack of funding, but they finally did it.
Thank you. Can we try to focus our question so we can get as many answered in the next 10 minutes as possible? Sir, step right up. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bob Irwin, and I've been a resident of Missoula since 1991. I lived in 8 different places, including 12 years abroad. I came here because my daughter came here to get her master's degree at the University of Montana. I got 2 kids, and I'm a proponent of higher education. My boy, I put him through Harvard, 4 years of Harvard, and 8 years at Yale. And he worked as a professor at Yale for 9 years, and now he's been in California as a professor for the last 12. My daughter got her master's. I have taken 3 young men from the College of Technology back in the early 90s and nurtured them into successful positions in the food service industry outside of Missoula. And I'm confused now. I think the College of Missoula College, from what I hear tonight, is become more of a prep school for the University of Montana. Where is our trade school where these kids can learn a good occupation and make a good living? And like I say, I'm a proponent of higher education, but we also need that entry-level workforce to train. Maybe we need to back up and look at the College of Technology a little deeper, and that would provide a great economic impact for Missoula, Montana, and all over. But anyway, my question is, has Missoula College moved into a prep school, or is it still a community college base?
Thank you. Any responses from the panel? Yes.
Unfortunately, people that would be able to answer that chose not to be here, and I'm sorry for that.
Well, I certainly can't address what the vision or goal of the administration is, but I can address what my successes and failures were and what my experience was. First of all, congratulations on your children. That's outstanding. And I think that there's a lot of students who, given the opportunity, might have those same dreams. And part of that opportunity is the Missoula College and the ability to transfer to 4-year schools. I don't think we've lost focus on the technological programs out there, and I don't think that because the nursing program has a 100% pass rate and it's always at capacity. The energy tech program has an outstanding program. The students there are being offered jobs before they're done with their program. So I don't think it's quite fair to say that we've lost sight on, and in fact, the culinary arts program is just booming. So to say we've lost sight on the technological aspect of that school, I don't know as if I think that's quite fair. But a significant portion, about half of the portion, are students who do want to transfer. And I think we'd be doing them a disservice to cut one off at the hip. And again, it's not a community college. What the university system in Montana has done is created a new paradigm for two-year school. And maybe we don't all support it, but it's not a community college. So we keep comparing it to a community college, but it's not one. So I think that's where we're running into a lot of our hiccups here.
Thanks. Anyone else? Come on up.
It was on. Excuse me. So my name is Mariah Williams. I have the fancy gold name tag. I match Asa over there. I'm the vice president of the student body at the University of Montana, the vice president of the Associated Students of the University of Montana. And I moved to Missoula in 2010. I've been here for 3 years. I had family here, but I only got here a little while ago. I was never a student at the Missoula College, and I probably never will be. But I'm sitting here and I'm listening to everybody bringing forward their history of Missoula and their vision for Missoula College and their vision for their neighborhood. And I start to think, what about the future of these students? The students are sitting here. The students have spoken about their location. They want their facility. They fought for their facility, and we got it. And my question to each panelist here is this. If each of you were to strip away your history and your frustrations with the University of Montana or just the students in general in Missoula, would your concerns about the environmental and community impacts of this building as a building be the same? It seems that the concern about the impacts of the Missoula College is because it's the Missoula College and the stereotypes and the history and frustrations that have come with the University of Montana. But if this were any other building, would you find these impacts to be the same? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep, panelists.
I'm glad you asked that question because I had the same question coming from President Royce Engstrom in a face-to-face after an ASUM meeting one time last December. And my answer was, talking about the South Campus, no, it wouldn't matter what building. Because if you know the history of that campus, alumni people got together, alums, during a time when the economy was totally depressed. $5 was a lot of money then. And they had a huge drive to get donations from this community to build athletic fields for the university for recreation. They took this money and they bought that land out where the university golf course is. It's about 160 acres total. Over the years, there were, lots of things were on there. There was veteran housing on there, and it was temporary after the war. But when they finally got water and they drilled wells and they got that 9-hole golf course, it was a great thing. And then they had a baseball field. You know what they've got out there. You cannot violate the donor's intent. Montana's code annotated says if the university or any other state agency gets a donation, it has to be used for what the people intended. And for those of you who aren't aware, we have an attorney representing us, and he has concisely stated in 3 pages what we have researched and studied for the last 2 years. And I don't have enough copies to hand out, but if you give me your name after the meeting, and your email, I will make sure you get a copy of the letter. It tells exactly why we think the right thing to do is to honor intent. That's the only thing that can be done legally. I also have the commissioner's response to that letter, and I would like to read a quick paragraph from it. He said, well, I got to find it here. In response to our attorney, he said, regardless, the Board of Regents, President Engstrom, and I are committed to a very open public process in selecting a site for the new building. This letter is dated May 16th of this year. In exploring all options, including the golf course parcel, we will work closely with the community, and when a site is selected, the proper procedures and laws will be followed to the letter. Given that we are only in the preliminary exploratory stages, and I am sure you will agree that there is no need for any cease and desist order or other legal action. As long as they stay away from historic fields that were a donation to this university that benefit this whole community, until they stay away from that, this is ready to go. They will face a lawsuit. That is one of the economic impacts that's facing where the college goes.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, as a history professor, I'm against the cavalier dismissal of history. And I think it is important, and history does answer that question. People objected when the university expanded or doubled its student population without building dorm rooms. It has nothing, or at least much less to do with the College of Technology from the point of view of many neighborhood people about the impact on their lives, their neighborhoods, their standard of living. And I think the university has been too quick to ignore that. And again, I wish people from the university administration were here and willing to engage on that topic. And I think the other thing is that many people are concerned about the constant pressure on the academic mission of the University of Montana. And this has been true ever since I've been here, and particularly the faculty. And I think that this has, the College of Missoula College is one example of concerns more recently, but there have been concerns along those lines going back to the day I arrived. And so to just simply to dismiss it as, well, it's the college and people don't like it, I think is to completely ignore the historical reality.
Thanks. We got a couple more questions. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be real quick.
You bet.
Thanks for the question, Mariah, your good friend. I think that while it's a good question that kind of asks us to get at a deeper emotional feeling, I think that unfortunately we can't really do that. We can't just ignore our base feelings that have been cultivated over a long period of time by a feeling of being dismissed or walked upon by anybody, let alone a multi-million-dollar institution like the University of Montana. So I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss people's feelings, but I would like to point out that we hear a lot about, in the past 10 years, in the past 20 years, there's been these wrongs over this period of time. And I don't have a problem with folks saying that, and there's probably some validity to it. But I would like to point out that the current administration hasn't been in office for the past 10 years or the past 20 years. And so any problems that we have with them, we're having now. We're having with this current issue. And those are the areas, these are the bridges we can build with a current administration, rather than not letting us ever move forward as a community because we can't get over the wrongs that were committed by a previous administration.
Well, first, Dave, thank you. That was appreciate the thoughtfulness of your response. I was just going to say, with respect to history, one thing that probably should be noted for the historical record is that when the administration, a fellow by the name of Neil Buckley was the president, and I've forgotten exactly what the years were, proposed moving the football stadium from its current site to the campus. I happened to be president of the faculty senate at that point. The faculty opposed the move for two reasons. Opposed the siting for two reasons, to siting it on campus as it presently is for two reasons. The first one was that's an area that may be needed in the future for academic buildings and to serve students. And it was inappropriate to use valuable, at that point, open space for athletic uses when there probably in the future, as the university grew, would be a need to service the academic needs of students. So, history sometimes can be interesting in that respect. We could have the College of Technology perhaps where Washington Grizzly Stadium is, had the university administration paid attention to the voice of the faculty at that point in time.
Thank you. Another question. Come on up. We'll try to get in the last couple.
Hi. My name's Rose Berland, and I am a Missoula College student, i.e. student also of the UM, and I am in the Culinary Arts program, a program that's been along at least as long as me. If the building is moved to the East Broadway campus, I am aware of the fact that the culinary program would not be, as well as the Fort Missoula site, due to funding, space, who knows, I get a million reasons. But my question is, what is the solution for that? Because the culinary program is detrimental to this community. It is the only nationally accredited culinary program in not only the state, but much of the Northwest, unless you're going to go to Seattle and pay triple what I pay here. So that's pretty much open to anyone.
All right, thanks so much.
Thanks for your question. Just for your information, the current plan, regardless of the location, no matter where it goes, whether it goes to, Fort Missoula or East Broadway or the or to the South Campus, won't include the culinary program. However, there is the room in the space, and it is being designated to build the culinary program. Now, there's possibilities that if there's cost cutting along the way, if we can get something cheaper, we could build the infrastructure for that so we can move it over slowly. In terms of your question as to why that's not happening, it's really simple. We went to the legislature asking for $47 million. They gave us 29. So that's why we're not getting a culinary program. Nothing to do with the administration or your student leadership or anybody in the community, other than perhaps we didn't do a good enough job contacting the folks who represent us in Helena and telling them exactly what we needed. So rest assured, though, that it's not being forgotten about. It's an outstanding program, and it will be included at some point in the future.
Why not? Come on up to the mic.
I know you stated that it would be moved over slowly, which I had heard in a couple of meetings that I had about it. And the problem with that is that a lot of the funding for our program comes from student sales. So if you move the students, we lose so much money that goes into the program, and the faculty, for that matter.
I understand the concern. Unfortunately, the options are, at this juncture, move it over slowly or don't move it at all until we wait around for a long period of time to get that kind of funding. And the appropriate task at hand here would be for the culinary program to have their feelings known formally and to have us know whether they want to be moved over slowly, incrementally, or whether they would rather wait around for the possibility of a decade or even longer, knowing our legislature, to fund that program in full.
Thank you. And another question. Should just press it and it'll come right on.
Yeah, there. Thank you. I just wanted to start by thanking Jim in person for organizing these forums. These are wonderful. I know you have put in enormous amount of time and energy. I think people tend to come and participate and not realize how much work you have put into it. So I would like to ask the audience to give Jim Parker a round of applause. I also want to thank all the panelists and also the great questions, especially from our students. I want to start with just a short comment. and it was Asa's comment on gutting the educational budget that brought me. You are correct in a broader sense, in a philosophical, political, economic sense. Education is under attack in this country. That nobody can question that. But when you make cuts, you're making choices. And I think we have seen choices being made. While 67 classes were cut, we hired several administrators with salaries over $100,000. That means there is money, but there is choice. The administration has got top-heavy. The faculty, many of our colleagues have lost their jobs. Now, this person, many people in this audience worked very hard to organize rallies, to organize workshops, to give interviews to various media outlets in order to inform the community and the larger Western Montana community about what is happening at the University of Montana. And what was very interesting is that a very good number of ASUM senators were willing to come, but the leadership was not. That is something that I think we need to discuss. You are representing the student body, and the students are why we are here. But the students are here because there are also classes offered, and the classes are offered by the faculty. It's faculty and students who run this university. There would be no university without us, right? Without students and faculty. But sometimes I just get this nagging bad feeling that the ASUM leadership is more with the administration rather than even taking 5 minutes to listen to the faculty and what has happened to our classes, what has happened to our programs. These are programs which were created, at least in my case, for nearly 25 years, and they're being attacked left and right. So, while I completely agree with you and I support your efforts to work with the administration, that is necessary and essential, I think it's high time for you to start talking to your teachers and listen to what has happened to their jobs, to their income, to their programs, to the courses that they're offering. It should be horizontal rather than hierarchical. That's something we need to learn, whether we are in a 2-year college or a 4-year university. That's one. Secondly, I want to assure those students here, especially from Missoula College, that I know Professor Mayer and we have talked, and many in the audience who are faculty, nobody opposes Missoula College. Nobody opposes 2-year education. I sat there close to Asa and others, and we said very clearly that we are staunch supporters of 2-year education. This fallacy, this fallacious claim that these are people with some hidden agenda. They want to hurt 2-year education. They want to insult you. They have some amazing plan to undermine the university is nonsense. Otherwise, I would not have put 150% of my life into this university for the last 25 years, when some of the over 100,000 salaries had not even arrived here. So I want to assure you that we are supporters of 2-year education. The discussion is not about whether 2-year education is important or not. The discussion is about how the two should interact and how the two should be bridged. That's a discussion that we should have it. And I agree with Mike here that it's an embarrassment for the administration to not be here, because the administration should be the bridge to facilitate that discussion between the faculty and between the students and between the staff. Having said that, here's my question. Thank you, Jim, for being patient and smiling at me. I always appreciate it. Where is the faculty governance in all this? Why isn't the faculty governance consulted when it comes to such important issues? Am I right, Sarah, was it? Sarah brought up an excellent point. She said, as you were talking, Sarah, I noticed you said, whether it's going to be in East Missoula or in South Campus. And the question is, why doesn't Sarah know about where it's going to be? Why doesn't ASA know where it's going to be? Why doesn't Mike Mayer in the Faculty Senate and in the faculty governors know where it's going to be? Isn't this a public institution, which means all its meetings should be open, all its decision-making process should be transparent, and the entire infrastructure is funded by our taxpayer? Why don't we know? And why, when they are invited, they don't show up? Those are my questions.
Well, thanks, Meredith, for taking my closing comments. One of the points I actually did intend to make is that those changed cuts came to limit the damage to the academic mission came only after protests organized largely by Meredith Kia. And I think that's a very important point, and people need to understand that. Again, I agree fully with Meredith that nobody that I'm aware of does not support two-year education or a building for the Missoula College. The question is where, and the question is what are the two missions of the two elements of the university, and how are they supposed to be coordinated? And I think a final point goes back to Louis' comments. I'm not going to touch his question any more than anybody else did, but it's nice that the students get to meet with the administration, but I want to point one thing out. Not only the administration isn't here tonight, but the administration, the executive committee of the Faculty Senate went almost a year without meeting with the president of the university. I'm now on the executive committee. I think it's my 4th time. And historically, we've never gone much more than a month without meeting with the president of the university. We met with the president of the university early in the fall, September, early October. We didn't see him again until I raised the issue, and we got a phone call conversation with him at the very last, after the last Senate meeting, at the very last ECOS meeting of the year. That's not communication. That's not leadership. And the question is not, I think, for us at this moment in this forum to talk about whether necessarily we need a change in leadership, but we certainly need a change in style. We certainly need a change in approach, and we need a much more open and communicative leadership.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Professor Kia. I appreciate that. First of all, I just want to point out and reiterate that I support you in terms of the gutting of our education, and for me personally, most especially with the humanities. But I also think it's worth noting that when an administration says we need to have a 2% cut or a 6% cut, it's actually the departments that make those cuts. So the departments are the folks that are making these decisions. They don't have decisions about the funding, but it's a fallacy to think that admin is up in their ivory tower, crossing lists off a name. They're not doing that. They pass those decisions down to the deans and heads of the departments, and that's where those decisions are made.
May I just say this in just a sentence? That's the administration's language you're using, which is very troubling. You have internalized their issues exactly, and this is the problem.
Well,
okay. Let's finish.
If you want to let me finish, first of all, I find that statement reprehensible. You're assuming that I've been bought out by somebody. When I ran my entire campaign to the student body, when you could ask any student at the university, that I've taken on the university head-to-head more times than any other student at the university. I've gone toe-to-toe more times about issues that I thought were important to students. And I don't think it's fair for you to say that I'm using the administrative language because it's a fact. If it's a fact and I'm using factual language, that doesn't mean I'm bought out. You implied it. If I can speak when it's my speaking period. When I say we, sir, I mean the greater university community. I mean my professors who treat me well, my professors, my classmates, my administration, the janitorial staff, every one of them. And I'd like for you to know that the students of this great state made one of our top legislative priorities with the very delicate time that we have to lobby to garner a 3% increase for faculty and staff pay. So please don't be so fast to assume that students are bought out by administration or that we're not listening to the faculty. We come to anytime the faculty invites us somewhere, anytime the faculty opens a hand or opens a door, we're there. So I just want to point that out. In terms of opposing, I just want to be clear that I don't think that anybody in this room and anybody in the community, and I think it needs to be said because there is this disconnect, I don't think anybody opposes two-year education. I don't think anybody opposes the Missoula College. What I think we have are differing opinions on how it should be implemented. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with having differing opinions. But I do think that our differing opinions quite frequently, and the administration and the university and the students and all of y'all, not a single one of us is innocent of imposing rhetoric to further our own opinion. So let's all take a step back and remember that we are a community. We are moving forward. It's not perfect, but we're trying. And please don't assume that the students are just towing the line of the administration.
Thank you. We're going to have I've liberally allowed this period to go a little longer than usual, but thank you for all your questions. We're going to give each panelist a 2-minute closing statement. Oh, were you waiting to make a final? All right, sorry. Come on up. We've let everybody else.
Ian Lang, and I'm
sorry.
So hard act to follow with you two guys talking away. But I'm a little confused here. I heard somebody said we're not talking about a community college. Maybe we're not talking about a VOTEC. What are we talking about here? What is the plan for this school? Is it redundant? Should it be just blended in and we just use the University of Montana's admission requirements and do that? I am really confused because somebody says not a community college. Is it not a VOTEC? It was a VOTEC at one time. So what really is the vision of what this new school should be? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who would like to jump in, please? Renee?
I attended a meeting in November, I believe it was 2000, it was a couple years ago, because they were rebranding the COT. And I went to that meeting and they said, we need to have a name that explains what we're doing better to the people. Everybody knows what a COT is. I still call it COT, and not out of disrespect, but just because it's nationwide, it's a term that everybody identifies with. So we spent a lot of money rebranding, and we came up with the name Montana College, University of Montana. Well, everybody uses an acronym, but I refuse to use that one.
Anyone else on that question? Yes, Asa.
I think that's an outstanding question and not one that I could answer for both historical lack of knowledge and because it's a much bigger question. I have my opinions about what the Missoula College is, and I think that there are illustrations of what it's currently accomplishing in the community and doing great work. But those decisions are all made at the Board of Regents level. I mean, that's a question to ask the Board of Regents.
I'm going to hold off. We're running late. I'm sorry, David. I'm going to ask that each panelist now give their 2-minute closing statement, and then if you'd like to stay and talk with panelists afterwards, please do if they're willing to hang out a little longer. So thank you again for attending. 2 minutes each. Renee, go ahead. You start, please.
Thank you for all the great questions and discussion. Again, I am also disappointed. The Independent, April 25th, from the U.S. Vice President for Integrated Communications was quoted, "We know there are conversations that have to be had, and we look forward to it." She adds that if citizens want to revisit the issues with Fort Missoula, quote, "we're happy to talk about it," unquote. Why aren't you here? From one of the senators over in a Missoula district, Missoulian, May 14th, I also read a letter from University of Montana President Royce Engstrom pledging ample public involvement as the project moves forward. In voting for HB 15, I took him at his word and still do, and look forward to an improved, constructive, and cooperative relationship between the university and the community. We need to have people talking to us that are
1
going to
minute.
talk straight, tell us the truth. In the meantime, if they decide to illegally encroach on what people donated to this great university years ago, you're going to see an increase in city taxes in addition to all the quality of life problems that we've had. We're going to have to deal with traffic issues. Our city taxes are going up. You're going to see plummeting revenues, donations to the Foundation and Alumni Association. We're already seeing that. The goodwill in this university and this community is going to be compromised terribly. The various recreation opportunities will be diminished or destroyed. You're going to lose 26 to 28 full-time and part-time permanent positions if you destroy that golf course. People that have been working at that course since the early part of this century. You're going to lose benefits to many charities. You're going to lose retail business that come into town.
Need you to wrap it up,
Track
Renee.
meets. And I appreciate the public discussion. I think some of this is therapeutic for people to get out and vent. And I couldn't say that we need more of this. We need more public input for this public institution.
Thank you. And Asa.
Yeah. First of all, again, thank you to everybody in the audience for your comments and questions, all worthy of being asked, and to all of the panelists up here and Jim. I think I'm a firm believer that the more a community can step back and talk with itself and its individual members, the better its own life will be. And I think Missoula has a long history of working out these problems. And so while I'm keenly aware of the distrust and the historical problems, I'm still optimistic. And maybe that optimism isn't shared, and I don't blame you if it's not. But I do think that the most productive way that we can move forward with this or any other discussion is by having forums like this one that Jim Parker's hosting, by having open dialogue, and certainly to do as best as we possibly can to keep our emotions out of the equation so we can have constructive conversations, so we can meet each other one-on-one in the community, shake our hands, and voice our opinions.
1 minute.
Part of what we have here is pent-up emotions on the community's part, on the faculty's part, on the students' part, and while it may not be a pleasant thing to hear, I would wager to bet that there's probably pent-up emotions on the administration's part and their feelings. So I think if we're all cognizant of that, we can move forward in a productive manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Asa. Tom?
I don't really have a closing statement. I'll be candid. I was very reluctant to participate in this, and more reluctant as the hour approached 7, primarily because I'm just worn out. I've been trying to sit down and have the kinds of discussions, Asa, that you suggested with the what I thought were appropriate university officials for over 2.5 years, as has the mayor. I certainly agree with everything that you've said. I do think that there are pent-up emotions amongst all the players, whomever they may be, certainly misunderstandings. It's clearly in everybody's interest to sit down and talk. I remain at a loss as to how we engage the administration in this. I know that myself and my neighbors, the mayor, have not been successful. Obviously, the faculty has not been successful. That, to me, is the one question that comes out of this evening. We all seem to agree that the administration needs to change its style. It needs to communicate more openly. We're all eager for that to happen. The question is, how do we get them to come to the table and have these discussions?
Thank you. John.
I'd like to thank everybody and Jim as well. And Asa, I value your opinions, having been an experienced student at the Missoula College, and I think you've answered a lot of questions. and at least put out some thoughts to the community on your experiences. I agree. I think with Tom and everybody else that we're all on the same page here, that both from the community and the panel, that the university has to conduct a more open investigation into this and make decisions in a more open way, taking into account the community's feelings as well as university financial and operational functions. So I have little more to say, and thank you once again, everybody.
Thank you. And Michael, please.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks for moderating this and putting it together, and thanks to all the participants. And I meant what I said. I was jotting down notes as we were going along, and Meredith pretty much covered everything that I intended to say, so I'll once again endorse his comments and add this. When we talk about the pent-up emotion that we hear on the part of students and faculty and community, and supposed pent-up emotions of administrators, in order for them to be exchanged, we need to have the administrators here to listen to the pent-up emotions of the community, the faculty, and the students. And if they have pent-up emotions they want to convey, they need to be here to do it. And I think the absence of the administration here is I said it when I opened, and I'll say it again, I think it's an embarrassment. I'm ashamed that the administration of my university can't conduct a civil discourse with a community, with its faculty, and with its students.
Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you for sticking with us. We went later than we had promised. Thank you for your questions and your participation. Come again next month. Let's see who we have at the end of August. Students will be back into town. Hopefully they'll be able to join too.